Hi, my name is Christopher Lepholtz. I'm the Vice President of Development, and this is the development key review agenda, or key review, I should say. Document should be posted in the invites, and I've included a number of FYIs up front. No video this time around because I didn't have time. And we'll jump into questions starting at number 4.
Awesome. Chris, I know that the team, I saw your note that the team has shifted to help with the performance. Just wanted to check in on the team, see how the reaction's been to that prioritization decision.
Yeah, so just want to make sure there's a little bit of comprehensive nature to the answer. I think if you talk to most ICs, they're actually pretty excited about it. We gave some high level guidance, which I think helps a lot with that. So I think that that's been my general impression from that perspective. There's definitely some high level management questions of, like how did we let ourselves get here? So I think that's one of the things that we have to work on for continuous improvement and kind of generally making ourselves better. We're actually doing some activation for a few activities. And one of the concerns I have is that our maintainers, we're leaning on a lot of our maintainers for that area. And I'm hoping that that doesn't cause people to be less or make people reluctant to actually become maintainers. So that's one concern I have. That's really on more the DB performance and the associated efforts there. On LCP, that's something else that's been kind of going on where we've been working on. The team seems to really have gravitated around it. It feels like it's kind of built into the process now. And most of the feedback I've gotten is extremely positive in that area because it feels like it's, better customer impact associated with it.
I guess just as a follow-up, did some of these problems I saw that you noted are like performance, like how do you solve make the queries more efficient? Do they view them as hard engineering problems that they can go solve? Is some of these things exciting for the ICs as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think some would argue that it is, hard to solve. So I think that's good. I think the one thing I would say is we're still at the stage where the answers are, I won't say immediately obvious, but they're definitely not like non-tractable. I think when they get to the non-tractable state of, what do you do? I think that's where, we have to be very careful about that because usually it involves much longer range decisions. Sharding is probably the best example of that from that perspective.
I think one example is like the PG11 query planning bug. That was that's a bug that engineers will brag about finding. That was a really low level computer science-y.
They're also famous war stories that people brag about 5 years from now, do you remember that one kind of situation.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. It's good. It's always good to check on the team. I think Sid, you have the next one.
So great job on the LCP performance. Should we add the other 2 core 3 vitals, first input delay and cumulative layout shift?
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. I think we can look at that and kind of see whether or not it's easy. Well, 1, it should be easy to measure, and 2, then look at what targets we want to set associated with it. That's just off the top of my head without too much research. But
yeah, well, the targets are right there, 100 milliseconds and 0.1. And then it might be that we're already doing great and we don't want to go through everything to adding this to the page and doing everything. So first, a sample would be great. Feel free to post something in the CEO channel. If we're already doing great on this, it doesn't make sense to add measurement. I'm just curious.
Okay. Yeah, let me take an action. Probably in the next 2 weeks, get you that data. A little bit slower right now because we're going into Easter weekend where a lot of
this is not urgent at all. If it's before the next meeting, that's more than enough.
Okay, cool.
And Nope, you got 6.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was trying to speak up on that one. So I was going to say, I think there are pages of GitLab.com in particular, like search results and project listings, where we have to treat it as a search engine optimization problem and really gearing it towards what the search engines are looking for makes sense. But then deeper in the application, it's more about the kind of human experience of performance, and that's where UX research and this stuff comes in. I think it's going to be similar, but also different in some respects, what we do for people. So that on to 6, Anu.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, so I know the team activated really quickly on the stability and performance and for the last several days. And can you share some early wins?
Yeah, probably the big one to start with is I think there's been a week of no sub ones related to DB. So like, let's be clear, that's number one. Number two is verify DB shifting load gave us roughly a 8-to-1 reduction because there are 8 replicas. So my understanding is we basically distributed that load from the primary to all the replicas just for the verify portion of the query. So I think that's probably the second one I would call out. Probably the third one I'd call it is that we've kind of activated quickly on a couple of other initiatives that haven't necessarily seen results yet, but it's caused us to kind of give some pretty key focus there. The two others would be obviously the sharding work, and then the CI abuse work as well from that perspective. So it's given us some focus there. And then the third one probably is more just an attitude shift. We've been doing a quick stand-up on the development side every morning, and one of the things we're reviewing in every stand-up is the SLA charts, just to kind of review those. And that's kind of got us in a better spot where we're kind of thinking about these things, particularly around our runner. And its runner numbers are right now not as great as we'd like, though. The key aspect to understand there is we've unified everything. And really, as we expand the runner fleet, one of the things we may see is start to differentiate based on paying customers versus non-paying customers, those kinds of things. So I think it's kind of led to a richer discussion there.
Yeah, and I put in a link in B to the stand-up agenda if people want to see the progress there. And C, I know Sam has some great charts about rapid actions like batch changes that affected whole sets of queries that result in step function improvements in database load and whatnot. Those are the biggest items. I think that led to like the immediate cessation of S1s. And then in D down below, this is more about like the little bits and pieces that aren't the big rocks in this project. And you can see the sort of the orange line is the asymptoting of the backlog. So we're hunting around for unknown unknowns. We're turning them into known unknowns. And that's where the orange line kind of planes off. So we feel like the backlog is essentially complete for other individual queries. And then you can see the purple is rewriting those things. And so substantial progress every day, tens of queries being fixed, which again results in these not step functions, but very significant cumulative increases in performance, and that translates into availability and other things.
Cool. I think we're ready to move on to question 7.
Yeah. We have the absolute number of MRs, but it seems to me that only the narrow MR rate matters. Like we always want it corrected for the number of people on the team. So should we remove the absolute one?
Yeah, I think the short answer on that one is I'm comfortable removing that one. The one that you mentioned in 8, I would like to keep though, because it kind of shows the distribution between the two. And it's really good for me to understand the ratios because contributions outside of development does affect development in regards to review times associated with that. So if we saw that ratio shifting, I want to be aware of that from that perspective.
So the one I mentioned in 8, I'm not proposing deprecating it. I'm just proposing that we add a target to it.
Okay. Yeah. A target to 8. Are you asking a target for the ratio, or are you asking for target?
It's not a ratio anymore, but like that was the change. That's fine. but now we have outside contributions. I think we should see steady growth there over time, or we should strive to see steady growth there.
Yeah, I should rephrase that. When you look at the pop-up, you actually see the ratios that gives the raw numbers, but then it gives it also by percentages to give you a feel over time. So if we add a target to this one, it would be a moving target because we hope that this continues to go up and to the right. Is that kind of the thought process, Sid?
Yeah, like 3% month over month or something like that.
Okay, yeah, we can add that.
Cool. Oh, it's the graph is much more complex than the title.
Yes.
Like,
it gives a lot of information there, but it's kind of key because one, it shows how many contribution computer or how many members are contributing outside. It shows how many are internal to the team. Then it shows the ratio between those two as well. And I agree, it's complex, but it's like an easy way for me to quickly assess. Okay, you know, is the review ratio is going to change as an example.
You can have all the graphs you want, but I do want to make sure that we capture, hey, is the amount of outside contribution still going up? That can be answered in one look. And right now I can't answer that in one look by looking at this.
I see. So you would
have, because I think I can get out of this. We are consolidating the analysts and engineering under one team under MEC. And one of the things they're going to be driving is uniformity amongst all charts. So all charts will go up and to the right. All charts will measure one thing and one thing only. There'll be very low mental overhead for going from chart to chart. And you'll see a refactoring of all this stuff to be simplified and more consumable. I think what you're seeing today is a result of everybody can contribute, which is it's a low bar for adding charts and whatnot, but then everybody's exercising their individual experiences and whatnot, and there's this high switching cost between chart to chart. So that will be cleaned up over time.
Okay, that's great, but can we clean up this one before the next meeting and just have a chart with the non-dev team members?
So just to be clear about what you want measured there is team members within GitLab Inc. outside.
Oh, no, sorry. I want to see outside development.
So what we have planned for open source contribution is two things: percentage of MRs that are coming from open source contributions, and then MR ARR. Those are the two things.
Okay,
and
that works.
Other things will be deprecated.
Yeah, that works. Okay, cool. So that's coming. Can we have a placeholder for that? And then even write like, hey, this graph is still coming, but
I think it
I guess the question is, do you want it on the development page, Eric, or do you want it on the quality page?
So I've never seen this metric before. I don't know where it came from, who created it. That's why I say it's a result.
Okay, so let's all back up. Okay, all right, let's back up here. Let's back up. Development page, development metrics. I'm the DRI for this. If what you're asking me is for something different than what this graph shows, then that's fine. When I get asked the question of where my team spends its time, it's a lot around how many MRs they're producing, but there's also the fact that they review a lot of code as well. That's what this chart represents, is the ratio associated with that. And it's not shown as a ratio, it's shown as a aggregate sum, because I think it's important to kind of reflect that. Because most of the maintainers, not all maintainers, but most of the maintainers come from the development team. It also shows the count of number of people who've been involved in a given month. We could definitely break those two out separate charts, but I think we need both of those pieces of information. Now, if you're asking me for a separate chart to say how many contributions we're making, totally happy to do that as well. But that's what I'm trying to figure out here.
I'm asking for two things. You can keep this graph, but I would like to change the header to something that more covers what we're seeing, because contributions outside development doesn't cover what this graph shows. So the header should be changed. And that I'd like to see the graph about percentage coming from the wider community. Eric seems to be already working on that. So I'm happy to wait for that.
So my suggestion would be, and I think this covers your ask, Sid, and simplifies things for Christopher, is at the engineering level, my level, we have the two metrics I mentioned, percent coming from the outside community and MR ARR. Those will also be in qualities page because MEC is driving those initiatives. And my suggestion, what we do here is what's relevant to Christopher is maybe the amount of time his people are spending reviewing those MRs versus authoring their own or something like that. There's some kind of time split. I think that's important for him to be the DRI of and be measuring and discussing here.
That sounds reasonable. One thing I worry about, do we have an engineering key meeting?
We deprecated that last time around in favor of doing one per department level. But all
okay,
the KPIs
so you're saying the quality one will have that metric. Great.
Yes, all the KPIs you'd want me to cover that we were previously doing will be represented in one of the departments. So we're passing them through. So there will be no gaps for lack of a meeting.
Cool. Thanks, that works. 9, I think it's already answered by Eric, but can we make sure all charts have to go up and to the right? For example, invert the MRs to maintainer ratio and then set a goal 5% or higher.
Yep. And I'll rather than wait, we're doing this generally. I'll just say, hey Mac, can your team do this first?
How's this one going to go up to the right?
So it's the percentage of a maintainer that you get as an engineer. So you get 5% of a maintainer. So you split every maintainer between all the people and you see how much is left of them.
This is not split among the people though. This is actually bulk rate of MRs that like it's super intuitive to think about how many MRs on average a given maintainer does a month.
Oh, I thought this was a ratio of people.
No, this is a ratio of MRs to, yeah. So like, I agree that this doesn't go up to the right, but like, I don't want this to go up and to the right because that would mean that maintainers are getting like, are working ridiculous hours. Or we're not getting enough maintainers to basically support the project.
Well, so how many maintainers does it take to do an MR? And it takes it's like 5% of a maintainer to do an MR.
I think the two things we care about that we should measure separately are one, how much time our maintainers are spending reviewing versus authoring. And then two, what is the wait time for these MRs so that people aren't waiting forever because we don't have enough maintainers. And that would force us to do both things.
Wait time that's a great suggestion. Just change the metric.
Wait time we already do with review time to merge. That's RTMT. So we already have that one covered. This one is specifically about what's the load on those teams, because you could still have a good RTMT, but not be increasing the number of maintainers from that perspective. Actually, RTMT is actually close to what I would consider, I won't say terminal velocity, but pretty close. It's 4.5 days, which sounds like a lot of time until you start putting in weekends related to that.
Cool. Is the new ratio would be the maintainer to MR ratio, and will be below.
It'll be below 1.
It will be % below 1. It will be a %. Or
okay, well,
it can be a partial if you so want.
We'll try it and see how it looks. Okay.
Cool. But I'm asking a lot about the metrics because there's not a lot of other things to talk about except for the big stability one, the GitLab.com availability action. Thanks for that. And all the rest is looking very good.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thanks, Christopher. And this is the first time we've gone down to this level of detail for each department. So there'll be a switching cost to that. And we're looking at things for the first time. So it's this is all good stuff. It's all forward progress.
Hey, Eric, I have a procedural question. So we spent a lot of time in depth on quality with Mech's review and with Christopher's review just now in development. how are you thinking about UX with Christy and Jonathan with security? Do you imagine? I just procedurally, like, do you want? Is there going to be key meetings for those, or how are you thinking about that?
Yep, already scheduled. We decided to, rather than turn one meeting into 6, we said, well, let's just do 2 and then 2. So quality and development went this week. The next batch will be security and UX.
Got it. So next month we'll do security and UX, and we'll alternate. So okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. That's great.
And eventually incubation when we have some metrics. We one person right now, so that'll happen eventually for sure.
Awesome. Thanks.
Cool. So I think that's everything for this agenda. So appreciate everybody's time and good questions. Really